Alright, welcome back everyone. So, the original plan was that I was going to have a video up before I made this video, but due to a whole confluence of different factors, the video that I'm currently working on is taking way longer than I originally anticipated to get done. So, in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and make another one of these things, and so I have two videos that I'm in the process of making right now. One is a Conlang case study that's like 5 months overdue, that should be up by the end of the month, and the other is the next video in the Alien Biospheres series, which will come out in December. But in the meantime, let's do some more conlanging. But before we get started, once again, a big thank you to all of my $5 plus patrons. Apparently something really special happened in the last week, because I've had an absolute deluge of new patrons since the last video, so a welcome to the new patrons, and my sincerest thanks to each and every one of you for your continued support. Right then, so, on to the conlanging. So, last time, we discussed and created the outline of the tense system, and how it evolved from the proto-lang into the modern lang and some of the grammar changes that take place along the way. Again, this is just a sort of rough outline. Things are likely to change in the small details as we progress, but for now, this is good for a basic grammatical sketch. But now it's time to move on to the next priority, which is the vowel harmony system. So this will actually be my first considerations into what I want this language to sound like, because I haven't even spared a thought for the phonology so far. And I do have a vowel chart handy, just for quick reference. So like I said last time, I only have one language that uses vowel harmony. I had some older languages that had vowel harmony, but they completely sucked and have been destroyed. So ignoring those for the time being. So what I'm envisioning is having a complex, multifaceted vowel harmony system with lots of exceptions and oddities, something along the lines of the Mongolian vowel harmony system. And I actually think the best way of doing that is to make a nice, clean, perfect, pristine vowel harmony system, and then destroy it. So first of all, I'm going to consider what types of harmony I want to have, because there's basically 4 different types of vowel harmony. There's front harmony, there's height harmony, there's rounding harmony, and then there's ATR harmony, or advanced tongue root harmony. Now, I've already done a height harmony system in Okolawak, so just for the sake of novelty, I'll do some of the others. Now, ATR harmony is kind of weird, and I don't fully understand it much of the time. ATR it's also sometimes referred to as tense versus lax, like some of these vowels like is the lax, and is the tense. But what counts as tense and lax can be completely different depending on which language you're looking at. The only ATR system that I'm actually properly familiar with is Mongolian, and the way it works in Mongolian, as I understand it, what is now an ATR harmony system actually used to be a front-back system, where Old Mongolian had y and but then there was a sound change where they lost their fronting and became back. But the back vowels that were already present, rather than merging with their front equivalents, they became lax. So now in Mongolian, what used to be a distinction between y and u is now a distinction between u and And there's also a distinction between o and o, which used to be a distinction between and o, if I've got that right. And now that I think about it, the same thing also happened in my beloved Manchu, because in Manchu has a 6-vowel system. It's got a, I, o, u, and which that 6th vowel is kind of a mystery vowel. I've seen it pronounced and transcribed a whole bunch of different ways. I think the consensus is that it's an but when I hear it spoken a lot of the time, it sounds to my ear like a diphthong, like an or type thing, which I don't know what's going on there. But where this mystery vowel comes from, I believe it used to be the oo, and what is now the oo used to be an ü. So I think it's an aerial effect, the same thing that happened in Mongolian, so there's something going on there. Anyway, I think I'm going to commit to front vowel harmony, and I think I'm also going to have rounding harmony. See, rounding harmony, in my experience, most often co-occurs with other types of vowel harmony. I don't think I've ever seen a language that just has rounding harmony and no other type of vowel harmony. I'm sure it does exist, but I haven't seen it. Another thing about rounding harmony, though, is that for reasons that I don't understand, rounding harmony usually only affects a subset of the vowel inventory. Like in Turkish, Turkish has both front vowel harmony and rounding harmony, but rounding harmony only occurs in high vowels for some reason, whereas in Mongolian and Manchu, the rounding harmony only happens in low vowels. In fact, in both Mongolian and Manchu, there's this really weird thing where, yes, you have rounding in the low vowels, but rounding harmony is blocked by an oo. So if you have a sequence of low vowels, they need to agree in rounding, but if there's an oo separating the low vowels, the rounding won't spread, which makes no sense because the oo is a rounded vowel. But I guess because it's a high vowel, like the fact that it's a high vowel overrides the fact that it's a rounded vowel, so it blocks the... I don't know, it's crazy. But if we're sticking with these parameters, if we're doing both front versus back vowels and round versus unrounded vowels, then what now needs to happen is I need to choose some vowels to fill out the inventory and give them front and rounded counterparts. So, I would like this language to have front rounded vowels. I'd like it to have ü and because I feel like I don't use them as much as I probably should. I use them a lot in proto-languages because there are some really fun things you can do with vowel changes over time with them that lead to some weird alternations in conjugations and stuff. But I specifically want the modern version of this conlang to preserve front-rounded vowels. So I'm going to go ahead and say that there's an ü and an vowel. And that means that if we've got ü and then it makes sense that we also have I and as the unrounded equivalents. That's pretty uncontroversial. And then for the back vowels, a back rounded high vowel would be U, and a low back rounded vowel will be O. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, an unrounded high back vowel is a like in Turkish, which I'm not really feeling that. I'm gonna leave that blank for now, but I think that might be our first gap in the harmony system. But we'll come back to that later. We've got the low unrounded vowel, which is ah. So that's a pretty simple outline for a vowel chart. And if we did include the high back unrounded vowel, then it would be an identical inventory to Turkish. Except that at this point we're assuming rounding harmony applies to both high and low vowels. It won't. It probably won't. So that's a pretty simple way of going about it. But one thing actually that I think is helpful to think about while making a vowel harmony system, something that I didn't account for when I was making my earlier attempts at vowel harmony systems, is that in these sorts of things, when we class vowels as either high or low for the purposes of harmony, or front and back for the purposes of harmony, that doesn't actually necessarily reflect whether they actually are front or back vowels or not. It's not like they all have to occur at the same level of frontedness or height or what have you. They're just relative, and sometimes that's not even the case. Like, my favorite example of this is when I was first studying Manchu, I was reading up on the vowel harmony system, which confused the hell out of me, which, I mean, I've been studying Manchu for 3 years now? More than that? And I still don't understand their vowel harmony system, but whatever. So in the Manchu vowel harmony system, the first rule that I got hit with was that the vowels that are written in the romanization with an A and an E form a front-back pair. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, that makes sense. I mean, I'd tried my hand in learning Turkish by this point, and so I was like, okay, the exact same thing happens in Turkish, where A and E, well, even though in Turkish it's more like an A, but still, what's written with an A and an E are a front vowel pair, where you've got, like, the plural suffix is either lar or it's ler, depending on the vowel in the stem that it's attached to. So that makes perfect sense. But what I didn't realize at the time was that what Manchu spells with an E is actually pronounced which is, it's kind of like a schwa, but a lot of the time it actually comes out more like the close mid unrounded back vowel kind of like in the Mandarin, like igu, that's the vowel. Which means that the back vowel in the pair is R, and the front vowel, mind you, is Yeah. And I have no idea why that's the case. Well, I expect it might be that originally it was R and E or something similar, and then the E just became more central, which is one way to destroy a vowel harmony system, is to have sound changes just destroy these distinctions you've made between front and back and high and low and so forth. But we'll get to that in a little bit. In fact, speaking of the A sound, that reminds me, that is another option. We could do what they do in Finnish and have a distinction between R and A, which, let me rough that in. So if I were to add those in, then how does that affect things? Well, that would mean that, what's the rounded version of A? If the low vowels don't exhibit rounding harmony, then they wouldn't need a rounded pair, so we could leave those as just unrounded. And then for the O, the unrounded version of that would be the vowel. So that's another possibility, is to include the vowel, but I'm not sure it makes sense to have the vowel and not the vowel to go with the oo. I'm not sure if I like that asymmetry. So actually, I'll hang on to that, but if we don't have the A vowel, and we get rid of the and go back to our pseudo-Turkish system, so then if we don't have the high back unrounded vowel, then E in this system is a neutral vowel, because it has no back equivalent. So I think actually this might be good for a more or less pristine system. It might serve as a good basis, and the rest of the irregularities we can just throw in with sound changes. But actually, I think it might help if we consider how this system evolved, because all we know at this point is that this system was around before the modern language, but it's not necessarily what was in the proto-language. It probably emerged at some point between the proto-language and the modern language. So I think I might rough out how this whole system came about. The first question to ask is where these front-rounded vowels came from, if they weren't in the proto-language. So very often front-rounded vowels can result from two vowels like E and U next to each other. They'll contract to like an U, and the same with like E and O, they'll become I, things like that. So if we say that, so for example, if there were some sound changes where any of these combinations of vowels in a hiatus became I, and either of these became I, then we get our front-rounded vowels. And one really easy way of getting vowels in hiatus like this is to just have a class of, for lack of a better term, weak consonants that then just get lost between vowels, and then that means loads of vowels just come into contact with each other. So when I say weak, I mean something like glottals, like an H or a glottal stop, or maybe some like pharyngeals or something like that. In fact, speaking of pharyngeals, that actually gives me an idea. Okay, just purely hypothetically, what if, just for fun, in the proto-language, there were only 3 vowels? And then if we just had those 3 vowels, could we develop our vowel harmony system from them? And the reason why that occurred to me is because of the possibility, let's say that we also had a class of, for lack of a better term, back consonants. And the back consonants would be things like uvulas or pharyngeals or things like that, which have a tendency to pull vowels down and back. So then we can introduce a change where vowels immediately following back consonants get lowered. So that then would give us, not much would happen to R because it's an already low back vowel, but E and U then would become E and O following back consonants. So this is already starting to inform us about the proto-language's consonant inventory, because that means the proto-language will have things like uvulas and pharyngeals for this to take place. So that takes our 3-vowel system to a 5-vowel system, except not really, because that's just an allophonic rule. So to make it phonemic then, we need another change. If the back consonants are lost then, not necessarily completely lost, but if, say, we had a uvula stop, like a k, if that merged with the normal k, k, then that would render the e and o vowels phonemic. And then we lose our weak consonants to bring those vowels into hiatus, and then they become our front-rounded vowels. So with just these changes, we've gone from a 3-vowel system to a 7-vowel system. And it should also be noticed that we're missing that vowel, just like in our little sketch. So, do I want to keep it like that? And then if we wanted to include the a versus r distinction, then I can think of a couple of ways to do that. So like in Arabic, where ostensibly it's a 3-vowel system, but the R vowel, when it's following a normal K, it's noticeably fronted, like calf. It's not calf. And when it's following a uvula, it's noticeably back. It's like a calf. And then once again, if we imagine in Arabic, if the distinction between k and q was lost, then now you'd have calf versus calf. And then that distinction between a and r is phonemic. Another example that comes to mind actually is in Mandarin, where in a word that ends with an alveolar nasal, like, just off the top of my head, just if we were just making up some Chinese words, this one would be tan, with not quite a full front A, but quite fronted, tan, whereas that one would be tongue. You can hear the difference in the A, tan versus tongue. So the velar nasal kind of drags it back a little bit. And then, once again, if we said in Chinese, all word final nasals just became N, then you'd have a distinction between tan and tan. The big question then would be where this vowel came from, if we were even going to include it. It could be that both E and E are neutral vowels, which is what happens in Finnish as well. So this system, it would be a lot like Finnish, except with rounding harmony in the front vowels, which I don't know if I like that or not. I think for the pristine system, I think I'm going to keep it simple and just have it like this. I don't think I'm going to have a distinction between A and R, so we'll keep it like this. In fact, while I'm at it, another thing that might help is if there was a change. Again, in Mandarin, there's a phenomenon where there is an Y vowel in Mandarin, but it's usually conditioned by certain consonants. So, for example, when I was first learning Mandarin, I really struggled to distinguish between the two sh sounds. So in Mandarin, there's I believe it's alveolo-palatal sound, which is sh, and then there's the retroflex sound sh. And, when I was first learning this, in rapid speech, sh and sh are very difficult to distinguish. But I learned that the easiest way to tell them apart was actually to see the effect on the following vowel. So, for example, say you have the word shu, like that, then it's a nice back oo, like shu. But if we just, invented the word, the sh is romanized with an xi a lot of the time, but that isn't shu, it's shu. It's a fronted u. So following the alveolo-palatal consonant series, an oo becomes u. So to add some more u's into this language, we could say that oo goes to u following, again, we'll come up with exactly what these are later, but for now we'll call them palatal consonants. And then to make that phonemic, the palatal consonants will be lost. Okay, so those are the vowel changes that bring us to this inventory, but keep in mind this is before vowel harmony has actually taken place. It would only be at this point then when vowel harmony actually kicks in. And I think I might go ahead and just say rounding harmony only affects low vowels. That makes sense to me with this missing vowel up here. I don't know, that just seems kind of intuitive to me. And that means that E then would be a neutral vowel. And it's neutral in the sense that it obviously doesn't participate in rounding harmony because it's a high vowel, and it also doesn't participate in front harmony because it doesn't have a back equivalent. So it's totally neutral. So what happens then when these high vowels get mixed up in a word with the low vowels? How does that affect the rounding harmony? So the two options would be to have them transparent to rounding harmony or to block rounding harmony. So in Mongolian, oo blocks rounding harmony, but e is transparent to it, which, again, makes no sense to me, but that's the way it works. Whereas in Manchu, any high vowel will block the spread of rounding harmony. And I know in Finnish, the E is a neutral vowel, and it is transparent to harmony, so I don't know, consensus seems to be that E is pretty likely to be transparent. I'm going to go ahead and say that E is transparent to rounding harmony. But as for oo and ü, the phoneticist in me really, really wants to make them pass on rounding harmony. But Manchu and Mongolian are just telling me that it's more likely that they don't for some reason. I don't know, it's a tough call, but I think I'm going to have to go with natural precedence on this one. I'm going to say that ü and oo block rounding harmony. As crazy as that sounds, that's just my instincts are telling me. And so are Manchu and Mongolian. So that, then, is our pristine system taken care of. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, and now comes the fun part, destroying it. I also have to keep in mind that one of my goals is to have some non-concatenative morphology, so things like umlaut and vowel raising and things like that, so I don't want to inadvertently mess that up. I haven't gotten to this yet, that'll be for next time, but I need to keep that in mind. There's got to be some wiggle room in there. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the best way of going about doing this is to employ changes that change the vowel's position within the vowel quadrangle, so that while they're still classed as front or round or high or whatever, they're not necessarily all on the same level like they used to be. Okay, here's an idea. What if, for example, our high unrounded vowel moved back? What if E became and then Ü lost its rounding to replace E. So we end up with this thing. That would mean that oo and e form a front-back pair, and then is the new neutral vowel. That is weird. That is very weird. I kind of like it though. But that means that we lose the u, which I liked having u. But one thing that I completely forgot to take into consideration until just now is vowel length. Is this language going to have long vowels? Well, I do like having long vowels because long vowels allow me to control where the stress is placed in a word more easily. So like, if by the stress rules it should be pronounced on the antepenult, but I like it better if it's pronounced on the penult, I'll just say, oh, you know, that second to last vowel is actually a long vowel. I'm going to say that it had long vowels back in the day, and whether or not it has long vowels in the modern language is yet to be seen. I mean, it's not impossible to have but no u. Like, I think Korean is like that. I feel like I've seen a language with an e versus u front-back vowel harmony pair, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I can't decide if I want to re-evolve the front-rounded high vowel, though. Now, if I was feeling really crazy, I could also say that while e goes to goes to the schwa, which would mean that this language would have a contrastive distinction between and which, I don't know, that's weird. That is weird. I mean, that is very strange, but it's not unprecedented. Like, in Mandarin, there's a similar thing. Like, for example, yeah, pinyin is kind of weird, but if we take these made-up syllables, in Mandarin, they would be pronounced, the first one is s, and the second one is s. So that would mean formed a front vowel pair with a, and it would be rounded to That does make sense to me. And then is the neutral vowel. Now it's e and u that block rounding harmony, which, I don't know, that just sort of comforts me a little bit because it just makes more sense to me that an e would block vowel harmony than an u. But yeah, I think I'm gonna stick with long vowels. I think there are going to be long vowels maintained into the modern language. It's like a weird mix between, like, Manchu, Korean, and Hopi. Alternatively, if I wanted to keep the u, I could do a similar thing, but instead of having the e become we could do what Japanese is in the process of doing, and turn u into and that would mean that and u form a front-back pair, and e remains as the neutral vowel. Which do I like better? I think it does actually make more intuitive sense to me that u and would be a front-back pair. I think I might actually go with this just because I do like this, but it's just that little bit too out there. But at the same time, I think I still might reduce to Okay, I think for now I'm going to go with this. And that means these are the vowel changes that take place since the proto-language to produce our modern vowel harmony system. But for now, I think I'm going to leave it there. So, do tell me what you think about this vowel harmony system, and this one as well. I want to know, this thing, it strikes me as really odd, but at the same time kind of within the realm of possibility. But who knows, maybe there are phoneticians out there watching this video that are just oscillating in their fury right now. So, yes, do let me know. So, as I say, do join me again in the next video when we'll be discussing non-concatenative morphology and probably fleshing out the rest of our sound changes and starting to form an idea of what the phonology is like in this language from the proto-language to the modern day. So that's about it for now, but I will see you all in the next one. Thank you very much for watching, guys.